I'm delighted to have one of my good friends and colleagues on the episode today, Brian Whisenant. I'm so incredibly grateful to have a conversation with Brian. And just a brief intro to Brian. Of course, his full bio will be in the show notes, but Brian is an actor, a director, and on the team at Breathe Life Healing Center. And if you don't know what Breathe is, just Google it now, or actually listen to the episode first, then Google it. But it is a phenomenal treatment program in Los Angeles, and I have many, many wonderful experiences of sending clients there. Welcome to the Element Q podcast. I'm your host, TJ Woodward, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for this empowering journey. Each week, we shine a light on the authors, thought leaders, therapists, coaches, and healers of all types who are making a difference in the LGBTQ plus community. Together, we honor those who came before us, the courageous and resilient trailblazers who stood for our rights and recognition. Their strength laid the foundation we stand on today. Here, we celebrate their legacy by diving into the stories, insights, and tools that inspire gentleness, healing, and transformation. So get ready to be uplifted and empowered. This is the Element Q podcast. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Actor first. That feels good.
Yeah, actor first, then director, then your work in this field. So I love leading with that. And I know you have a long experience of your own healing. As we know, the Element Q podcast is really dedicated to having a conversation about the deeper healing within the community. And as always, before we hit record, I was asking you a few questions and a few different things came up. Your own journey of recovery, also the focus that we have now in our field on LGBTQ affirming. What does that actually mean? And also Chemsex and body image. So we have a lot we can unpack today in this episode. Where do you want to begin in terms of talking about healing within our community?
Wow. I mean, the first thing that came to my mind when you brought it up was what it means to be affirming. I travel a lot for Breathe. I have this fancy new National Clinical Outreach, my new little national title. But I've been traveling for Breathe for years. I mean, I guess 4 years. I've been there almost 5. And when you travel, it's really interesting because it's important for me to go into places where LGBTQ people are who may not have access to truly affirming care. And what does that even mean? I know that when I meet with people, we have these relationships with other facilities, and, sometimes you might want to say something that is not very PR to a facility, but you learn pretty quickly what affirming means to them versus what it means to me. And I've noticed that for many people, what it means to be LGBTQI plus affirming is that we will take their insurance or
Yes.
that accept them. And honestly, I don't think that some people even understand, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, really, denial versus do people believe the lies that they're saying?
Mm.
I don't even know if they think anything differently. I think that they truly believe that that means they are affirming.
Yeah, and so let's dive in a little bit deeper because I mean, like I said, I have personal experience of sending or referring or encouraging many clients to go to Breathe, specifically gay men and specifically gay men who are having issues with shame and issues with staying sober or issues with trauma healing. And when I think about LGBTQ plus affirming care, like you said, and I think it's wonderful. I want to say I think it's wonderful that people are putting it on their website and wanting to be able to help our community. But there's also a big difference between we have one gay therapist who can meet with this person once a week versus like a program who's truly dedicated to doing some of this deeper healing, which I know Breathe is for sure through personal experience. So for you, what is that difference and what's important to you in terms of actually being LGBTQ plus affirming?
Wow, that's a great question. I started to think about, and I often will talk about my entryway into treatment. I worked at Oxford Treatment Center in Mississippi, and I worked for this incredible man, Mark Sawyer. He's no longer there. He's at a different facility that I can't remember which one. And I always say that he and Deb Hughes are my mentors. Deb Hughes is the founder and managing partner, co-founder of Breathe. And Mark, we brought on I mean, this was owned, well, I won't get into all that. What is it, who owns Oxford Treatment Center necessarily. But, Mark brought in a therapist who specialized in LGBTQ issues, and there was an LGBTQ group at the residential. And that was fantastic. But I knew that we were becoming an affirming facility when they asked me to facilitate a support group. And I'm not a clinician, they couldn't bill insurance for this, but it was a community support group in the evening for our outpatient clients. And they let me really build it out as I wanted it to be. And I wanted it to be community support. I didn't want it to be a 12-step meeting. I wanted it to be for anyone in Mississippi, near Oxford at least, who had struggles in regard to their identity and sexuality. That means to me, that is an affirming facility. Now, granted, I don't think they have that anymore and that therapist left, so I can't speak to what they are today. But, they didn't have queer ownership or, I mean, they had the one therapist, but like there are nuances in regards to what it means to be LGBT affirming. Now, Breathe, on the other hand, what's interesting about Breathe, we don't have an LGBTQ group at Breathe. Now, granted, we do have a gender group now, like exploring, and it's not just for people who might identify as trans or non-binary. It's anyone who wants to, I don't want to say learn about gender, that's not really the right word, but explore what gender means. That's a newer group, but because we are queer owned and operated, it's like our DNA, our blood is rainbow. It's like, so on the surface, for some people, an LGBTQ group would be the definition of being an affirming facility, but Breathe doesn't even have that, right? So it's very interesting. And now, our owners are gay, our CEO is trans, and I hate to like put people in boxes, but this is really important for people, especially trans people. I mean, how many trans CEOs do you know? I mean, I don't really know a lot. And so when I talk to trans people on the phone, I know their concerns because I've heard them. I've gotten calls from people who say, I'm in a hotel because I was promised that this was affirming and I got here and I'm misgendered. I'm in a house with people as I was assigned, the gender I was assigned at birth. And those are just like kind of like the basics of trans affirming care. And so I've talked to these people. So when they say, how is Breathe different? How is Breathe different? Everyone says this to me. And I say, well, we have a trans CEO. My supervisor, Emmy, is trans. Does that show a difference? And they're like blown away. They can't believe it that a trans person is the CEO of a major treatment center in Los Angeles. So that's like putting your money where your mouth is, beyond having a group or beyond having one queer therapist. It's the DNA of the facility.
Yeah, and I love that. And one of the things that as you were talking, I was thinking about, to me, the most important first step of recovery, or if you think about it from a treatment perspective, the person's experience on day one is about safety. And safety is very layered, right? So we obviously have physical safety, and I hope every treatment program is at least hoping for that. But we're talking about emotional and spiritual safety here. And what do I mean by that? For someone to be seen as who they are. And I think there's also a camp within the LGBTQ plus community that is frustrated by treatment, that are saying they're affirming, but really they don't have the skills, like you said, like to have it, the DNA. I love that. And I love that our blood is rainbow. I don't know if anyone's ever said that before ever. So that's great to have an original thought about that. But I also think that we want to help other treatment programs learn, right? And I think about your CEO, Beck. Beck was a guest on the show, on the podcast, and he's incredible. And I've watched him over the last 18 or so years that I've been in this field, and I've watched him, build his own effectiveness in this field and sticking with it, right? Because one of the few people 15 years ago that was talking about trans issues, period, right? So now there are more, and we love that, but it's also like, does the person walking through the door feel safe? And one of the things I know about our clients is they're very, very highly attuned to who's safe and who isn't. Now, some of it could be inaccurate in some way based on their own trauma. I've worked with clients who are afraid of men because they haven't yet healed that. So they're going to be safer with someone who's non-binary or female presenting. There are a lot of layers to that, but we can create true safety on day one for the client. And I wonder for you, Brian, if you now go back to your own story of recovery, because I always love to hear what brought you into this work, why a healer. And, I know the reason I'm in this work ultimately is my own trauma and my own healing and wanting to make a difference in the world. So I wonder if we can hear a little bit of your own personal journey with recovery and healing.
Yeah, I mean, I loved, you probably don't know this story. I love the story of how I began working in treatment. It was honestly against my will. I remember, I mean, there's a cliche about people in early recovery. So just to give you a quick rundown of my, I was an actor in New York. My addiction was very progressive and very slow to the point that when I realized, I didn't realize I was an addict fully until October 26, 2014, the day before I got clean. Like I just didn't get it. I was one of those who, even when I put the needle in my arm, you could not have convinced me that I didn't choose to do it and
Mm.
that I wasn't different than the other people in the room. They're the addicts. I'm not the addict. And I had moved from New York to LA and ended up homeless out here and went back to Mississippi, which I swore I would never do. Me and the cat. The cat, I don't know. This is birth protocol, but there she is. 18 and a half. We were homeless together,
Oh.
And, the gig was up when I went home. I mean, my parents, and this is so important about denial. Like, I wasn't, and people ask me all the time, is it okay to give my kid money, this and that? And I say, look, I wasn't like intentionally manipulating my parents. It's just like when that money hit my hand and it was like, like I really wanted it for good and I
Mm.
part of it for evil. And then it all turned, whatever. But after 3 months with them, I ended up in treatment. Like, I mean, it was just I knew for me it was consequences. Like I realized I was an addict and I believed that they would not have me back. And I had this moment in the 12-step fellowship I'm a part of. There's this reading that talks about when at the end of the road we find that, there's either this path or this path. And I literally had the thought I could go live under the bridge and try to sell my body,
Mm.
my 130-pound body that was gray and dying, because I'm
Mm.
sure everyone would want to buy that under the bridge. Or I could ask for help. And so I
Mm.
asked for help. And, as I think I started working in treatment at 2 years clean.
Mm.
And you know how this is the cliche where people say, I'm going to become a therapist and I'm going to do this. And I was like, I'm going to be an actor. I don't want anything to do with treatment. I don't want anything to do with treatment. So I was working as an assistant at a wealth management company, very high intense, not enough time on the podcast, but it was like working with the Devil Wears Prada. Um, Left that job for another wealth management assistant job. And then I went to a convention, an NA convention, and it was talking about turning it over. Like that's what I kept hearing, turn it over, turning it over, turning it over. And I swear to you, TJ, I woke up on January 2nd and I said, all right, universe, I turn it over. Whatever you got for me, I got it. And I walked into work and I got fired.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, no, 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 no.
I didn't mean that. Yeah.
Didn't mean that. Anything else? Now, what's interesting is our main client, our number one client, was the owner of Oxford Treatment Center. Well, the former owner, the founder of Oxford Treatment Center. My sponsor said, you need to call Billy right now and ask for a job. So I called Billy. Billy's like, I don't have anything right now. but hold on. So I started waiting tables, and 4 months in waiting tables, I had an incident where that voice in my head told me to drink,
Mm,
um, and it freaked me out. And so the next day I got on Facebook, and there was a job opening, community relations, Oxford Treatment Center, and I read it, and it was me. It was
mm,
it was like I said, "Oh crap." So I applied and I got it. They moved me to LA. I met Brad Lamb almost immediately. Brad tried to hire me, but I knew pretty quickly that Breathe, I could have so easily gone to Breathe. I was a chemsex person with body image, trauma. I mean, though I had no insurance. That was one of the hiccups. But otherwise, I was the perfect fit for Breathe.
mm.
But I'll just say it, AAC, Oxford, they had moved me here, and I felt like I owed them the time. And I was so grateful that they had done that for me. And I told Brad, maybe in a year, and he remembered almost to the day.
Wow.
Facebook messaged me, and I thought I was talking to my friend Brad Lamb, but at the end of the conversation, he said, um, let's talk about a job. And
Mm.
so I was hired a couple of days later, and yeah, so the long answer, but against my will. That's the short answer.
But it's so funny, Brian. That's kind of my story. I mean, there's definitely some differences because I didn't get into the field until I was like 22 years sober. But I promised myself literally, like, I will never work in the field. That's not for me. I had, I guess, preconceived ideas about what the field was, and it just wasn't what I wanted. And my friend started working at Altamira in Sausalito. I lived in San Francisco at the time. And when he described the program, I felt this thing deep within me that made me realize I was supposed to be there. And I just
Oh,
followed that intuition. Yeah. And it's funny, actually, I tell this story sometimes, not very often, but I sent my resume off, and my now friend Carolyn, who became my first boss in the field, was like, "Oh, thank you so much for applying, but you don't really have the experience we're looking for." And I responded to the email that's really weird because intuitively, no, I know I'm supposed to be there. And she called immediately, and I answered the phone. She was like, "I just have to talk to someone who would say that," right? And that, even that didn't feel like me because, like, it wasn't in my mind that I'm like, "Oh, I should say that." I was just like, "No, I know I'm supposed to be there." And so the long and short of it is I started in the field, and that was 2008, but it wasn't anything that I thought I would stay with. I was wanting to go back to school at the time. There was a lot going on. I had actually started going back to school, and I really saw myself in a different arena. And I just fell in love with the work. And what I fell in love with was not only the transformation that I got to experience, but there's something so powerful in meeting someone at maybe the lowest point in their life. And I had been through many low points in my life. And I knew that I had something to offer in terms of how to walk through that, right? But then the other piece was just the need for more, because that was 2008, and we weren't really talking about trauma healing much then. Breathe was one of the first. Breathe was one of the first that was actually doing trauma healing, talking about shame, talking about getting down to the deeper root causes. And so I kind of simultaneously fell in love with it, but also realized I had something to offer. And I think that combination has kept me energized in this field for coming up on almost 20 years. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm curious. You mentioned body image, and I always want to lean into what I hear someone saying because Dr. Patrick Lockwood and I did a whole episode on body image, body shame within the LGBTQ plus community. I'd love to hear your experience with it. I know at Breathe you do a lot of work with that. It can manifest as an eating disorder, but it can manifest in a lot of other ways as well. I'm curious about that.
oh, yeah. So one of the things that makes Breathe so special for me, and the original intent behind Breathe was to be a place where eating disorders and substance use disorder could be treated together. That was the
Mm,
original. I think the fact that we became an LGBTQ program was like almost an accident. Like it just kind of shifted, and becoming a chemsex treatment program, like we created our chemsex program based on the need of our
yeah,
clients. Like
yeah.
Kathleen and Brad saw that that's who was coming to us, but the original intent was eating disorders and substance use together. And we have the most incredible dietitian, Rebecca Yadagari at Breathe. She does a little work at our residential, but she mostly works in our PHP IOP, which is integrated. And, we are a trauma program, like you said, and we're one program, and that can be a little confusing for people because especially people who do what I do, you want to put facilities in a box so
Yeah.
you can understand where to send them. And I totally get that because I do it too. Like I totally do that too to help myself. But understanding that Breathe is just one healing program. It's a healing center. It's called that for a reason. It's one program. However, that being said, I sit in on our body image group and I'm just blown away by it. And when I tour people at Breathe, we have this incredible hot tub and pool up in Laurel Canyon. And when I'm in the body image group, the pool gets brought up. It gets brought up. I mean, you have people, I know for me, I was eating once a week. I ate once a week and I slept once. I was like, I slept once a week and then I ate the next day, maybe the next day, maybe I'd eat two times and then I'd find drugs and use again.
Yeah.
And I joked about being under the bridge at 130 pounds, but I was 130 pounds. I mean, I don't like to talk about weight often, but I weigh 180. So imagine me 50 pounds less.
Yeah.
And then I go to treatment in Mississippi. Again, I went to the Haven House, a state-run facility, different than the one that was here in LA. I'm grateful for them, but it was don't talk about sex, don't
Right.
have sex, and
Right.
eat 3 meals a day. I'm telling
Right.
you, we do need to eat. Don't get me wrong, we need to eat. But I was eating, I mean, I think I want it right now. It was like biscuits, gravy, ham, sausage. It was the whole Southern shebang. That was just breakfast.
Right.
So my body grew significantly, and I had no outlet to really talk about it. And you add on top of that, I mean, I'm just going to go there, TJ.
Yeah.
Like when I'm on meth, I'm watching all this porn. And guess what? I'm not watching porn of all shapes and sizes. That's not
Right.
the kind of porn I was watching. Like, so you're watching all this porn, you're on meth. I was living in Los Angeles where there's already this body type that's whatever, the Instagram body.
Hmm.
Thank God at Breathe, we have Rebecca. We have the body image group. And you do technically you would have a body dysmorphic disorder. Um, you would have that. My brain is leaving me, but
A
you
that
diagnosis.
diagnosis.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you, diagnosis. But you don't have to be in that group because almost every chemsex person I know of either has body image issues, disordered eating, or an eating disorder presents itself. And in our community, I am that person a lot of people call. And I remember the person my friend Tara took me to a therapist's house. And it's like Spider-Man. I understand the great responsibility I have being the first person that someone talks to. And sometimes I will talk to particularly gay men who will ask me about the gym at Breathe.
Mm,
They'll say, I said, yes, we have a gym. They're like, great. I work out 3 times a day.
right.
And I know that that's purging. I know that's an eating disorder. That's purging with exercise. I used to say it and they would freak out. I don't
Right.
have an eating disorder. So now I don't say it. I just jot it down. So the body image piece, the disordered eating, purging with exercise, like it's so connected to chemsex and having a dietitian on staff, having an eating disorder processing group, having body image group. I'm just moved that I work at Breathe and that we have that for people because I did not have that.
Absolutely. And a few things that you said are so important. One, this identification that we can look at the symptoms, right? Like eat 3 meals a day, the things that we can say, but like getting down to the actual cause of that or the root of that. In my experience, it's shame. There's a lot of shame, and then there's a lot of externalized shame in terms of like having the perfect body, right? We see this a lot, really with all humans, but it's definitely heightened within the LGBTQ plus community. And I see that happening so often that it's become the norm. The other thing that you said that is one of the things that I love talking about, and that is a lot of treatment programs aren't talking about sex. And the old school stuff is like, just don't do it. Don't do it for your first year, which we know no one is adhering to. I mean, a few people, but 98% aren't. So then we're going underground with it. And I'm thinking about sort of like in the 12-step community too. The sponsor is like, don't have sex for your first year. Well, people are doing it anyway, and they're not talking about it. So then we're taking shame and then we're adding shame to it as it goes underground, right? Secrecy, silence, and judgment keeps that shame alive. And so anytime I go to a treatment program and do a clinical training, I will almost always say, what are you doing in terms of your conversation about sex? Sometimes the clinicians just look at me like, oh, I can't believe you just said that out loud. And if we're not talking about it, what are we doing, right? What are we doing in terms of treatment? And I don't want to come from a place of judgment about that, but about come from curiosity. And in my experience, the staff themselves maybe hasn't done enough healing to be able to feel comfortable and safe talking about it. And, in a world where we would just rather pretend like that's not happening, which is fascinating to me. But within our community, and when you think about the body image and what becomes hypersexualized, what body types become hypersexualized, what becomes what we consider to be hot or attractive, if we're not talking about that, we're doing a disservice to our clients. And I'll tell one little story, and then believe it or not, we're coming to the end. But one
I'm
story,
surprised.
I worked in treatment. And, a straight male therapist said to me, hey, can you help me with this gay client? I don't know what to do. He's hooking up on the apps. And I said, well, let's start with what you did, right? What did you say? And well, in our session, I just had him pull the phone out and delete all the apps. And I'm like, okay, well, I run the LGBT group. So I'll go in and I'll ask him what he did next. And I already knew what he did next. He deleted them all in the office. He walked out of the office and reinstalled them, right? So
Right.
like that's like an obvious thing. So we're going
Mhm.
to pretend like that works. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. And part of that, I'm guessing, is that therapist's discomfort or inability to hold a space because people are relapsing because they're horny. Right. And
Yeah.
sometimes we're not talking about that, right? Because to be able to look at sex and using as one thing for someone who's a chemsex person, and we use that term, and that just means someone, well, I mean, it means a lot of things, but essentially that sex and drugs are combined. And for someone to be able to separate that in a quote unquote healthy way, and I don't love that term, so I'll say a way that works for them or that's useful to help their recovery, that is nuanced. And I think sometimes in our field, nuance isn't always celebrated. It's like, just don't do this, just do this. This is the right thing, this is the wrong thing. So I know I just said a lot, but is there anything that comes up for you with that?
Oh my gosh. I mean, so much is coming. I mean, first of all, the first thing that came to me is that so I was on Do Not Disturb, I swear. And it still rings. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I sat in on our IFS group. I love IFS. It's one of our main modalities at Breathe. And I'm a person who talks about sex. I'm a person who talks about it in 12-step meetings. But I grew up in a household. It's like that Sex and the City episode, Charlotte. I did not grow up in a naked house. Okay. We did not talk about sex. I did not get the talk. No. I'm sitting in on our IFS group and, we're talking about parts and attraction got brought up by someone, attraction to someone there.
Yeah.
My first thought was, oh my God, I can't believe I got uncomfortable. I even was just like this. And I watched our therapist, who's incredibly skilled, of course, not shame this person. That's it's a normal thing to be attracted to someone in the room. That's a normal thing. But my own issues, even though I have done work, I've worked the steps, I've gone to therapy, I still had that oh, we can't talk about this. Oh my God, I can't believe we're talking about this. And that was just the first thing that popped up. That is something that we not only talk about it, Breathe, but the opposite of shame. We just love the person through it.
Yeah.
It's a normal thing to be attracted to someone.
Well, and I really appreciate your saying that because I remember having the experience of, how many times have I worked in a program where you go into group supervision or a clinical staff meeting? It's a safe place to talk about what's going on, but is it really? And then I've worked at places, and I'll do a shout out to my friend Melissa Stevenson. She was the clinical director or the executive director of Foundation San Francisco, and it was truly a safe place. And it was one of the first times I got to acknowledge that when I was facilitating a group and I found a client attractive, taboo to say, interesting, right? It's so
I know.
interesting because what you just said, of course, it's normal to be attracted to someone. It's what I do with it that's important, right? We're not going to act on that attraction. But what I discovered was that I was not giving the person attention because it felt awkward for me. And so I realized in working with Melissa and in a really safe environment that like I was attracted to a client, but I was ignoring them essentially. And I got to work with my own stuff around that. It's like, oh yeah, like this young woman I'm working with, and I'm totally available and open and present. And then I'll get to the person I'm attracted to and then kind of almost overlook him. Right. So I realized that I had some more work to do in my own healing because all of that to me in my own journey is a manifestation of trauma and shame because of my own sexual trauma and because I grew up in a hypersexual household, but it wasn't talked about. I had so much shame around just being a sexual being, period. And so my own healing as a clinician was to be aware of that and allow myself to stay present with that person and be accountable for what I'm feeling. Obviously, none of this is happening out loud with the client. It's all an internal process, but I was aware of my inability or my belief in my inability to be truly present for that person.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. It makes me, I'm back in therapy. I said, I should bring this up to my therapist.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something great to work with. Well, but here we are, Brian, at the end. Can you believe it? I'm
Yes,
wondering,
because I would just talk to you forever. I'm
I
not
know
surprised.
we could do this for another 2 hours.
I love you,
Okay,
and I
okay,
love.
listeners, would you stay with us for 2 more hours? We might have a few. So, is there anything in closing you want to say, Brian, to anyone watching or listening right now, or anything that you feel like maybe we haven't discussed that you'd like to share?
Well, I mean, the first thing I want to say is thank you. You've meant the world to me, and
Mm,
I do want to say this in regard to the path, because I may have said that I started working in treatment against my will because I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a director and a writer. But what I didn't know is that Breathe would play a major part in me getting my dream project made. Like Breathe helped produce my film. And
yes.
imagine, what if I had said no to Oxford Treatment Center all those years ago? I mean, perhaps the universe would have course corrected me. I would like to think so. But that yes to this thing that I was absolutely against led me to the thing that I wanted. And so I just wanted to say that. And it led me to you. And what you did for me in the film was so special. And just
Mm,
giving me an outlet to speak on here is special. And I'm just so grateful. I think just being open, and I always say this, like I do believe in hope. As cheesy it may sound, I always tell families that as long as there's breath in the body, there's hope. I firmly believe that. I believe that for me, for you, for anyone, not just the person who is seeking treatment, but the person in long-term recovery, because we're all working on something. There's always something. There's always something.
there's always something. Well, Brian, I just adore you and I appreciate you. Of course, we'll have your contact info, but I do want to just ask you to name the project, please, that you're
Oh,
referring
yes.
to.
It's called Wrath Mercy. It's a short film that had its film festival run. I have a contract in my email for distribution. I'm just waiting on the rights to my songs anyway, long story short, it's people are going to be able to see it really, really soon. Nationwide, worldwide.
Worldwide, universe wide. So, thank you, everyone. And thank you one more time for tuning in to the Element Q podcast. And what I want to say in closing is some version of what I always say in closing, and that is I'm just going to quote Brian. I love this. If there, wait, tell me it again. If you have breath,
If
there's
there's breath in the body, there's hope.
If there's breath in the body, there's hope. I love that. So remember who and what you are beyond the trauma, beyond the shame, beyond the disconnection. You came into the world as a whole and perfect being, and that is the truth of who and what you are. So, Brian, thank you so much. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode or if you think there's someone who might get something from this, please share it with them. Please like and subscribe. Thank you, everyone. Peace and blessings. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Element Q podcast. It's an honor to walk this path of healing and transformation with you. Remember, the courage and resilience of those who came before us live on in each of us. Let's continue to carry their legacy forward as we support one another in creating a world filled with love, gentleness, and empowerment. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we're building a brighter future, one story at a time. Until next time, I'm TJ Woodward, and this has been the Element Q podcast.